Hey guys, welcome to today's video. We are here to do a little ranking. I've seen several people uploading videos where they're like ranking different products, ranking different brands. And so I looked in my eyeshadow collection, and the brand that I see the most often is Natasha Denona. I do have 7 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes that I am going to rank today. I will tell you from my least favorite down to my most favorite, and I will give you the reasons why. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Kelly, and I love all things makeup and beauty. I love talking, I love makeup, I love talking about makeup. So if you like to chat about makeup too, I would love to have you subscribe and be part of the KBELLA fam. But why don't we go ahead and jump into the ranking. To say there are 2 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes that I have owned and decluttered. So we are going to start with them. And in 7th place, my least favorite Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette that I tried was her mini sunset palette. This was actually the very first eyeshadow palette from Natasha Denona that I tried. I tried it several years ago, and I just felt like the quality wasn't there. Now, I didn't have anything to compare it to with Natasha Denona. I knew her eyeshadow palettes were expensive. The minis at the time were $25, so I was like, I want to give it a go. I want to see what it's all about. And I actually took this to a wedding. Yeah, it was a wedding in January of 2018, and I tried to put it on my eyes, and I just felt like I didn't get a ton of pigment. Like I was trying to dig in there, and it just wasn't good quality. So I think I actually ended up returning it. I don't return a ton of makeup, but I do think that I actually ended up returning that one. Coming in the number 6 spot, another palette that I didn't return this one. I sold it on my Poshmark. It is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. This was, I think, the second Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette that I tried. The Sunset was the first. This was when she started coming out with her middies. I saw the bronze palette. I love bronze shades, and I was like, okay, it's a little bit pricier. I want to say maybe it was like $65 at the time, but I went out and I picked it up, and I have to say, I didn't dislike it. I thought the formula was great. I thought the shimmers were great. I thought the mattes were super creamy and blendable. The problem for me was I felt like all of the tones were very mid-tone. I didn't have a light shade that I could use to set my eyeshadow primer, and I also didn't have a shade that I could use to highlight like my brow bone or inner corner, which I really like to do. And then on top of that, although when you swatched the shimmers, they looked different, when I was actually creating looks on my eyes, all of the looks turned out the same. They all looked very similar. Now, if you're into bronze, I mean, I was creating beautiful bronze looks. It's not like I didn't enjoy the eyeshadow palettes, but as I added more palettes to my collection, there were just other eyeshadow palettes that I was reaching for, and I wasn't loving that one. So that's why I went on to sell it on my Poshmark, because I like to keep my eyeshadow palettes very curated, and I like to use what I have. So I wasn't using it. I decided I wanted to pass it along, and now it has a new home. In the number 5 spot, this is another mini that I heard a ton of people buzzing about on YouTube. I think specifically Kelly Gooch as well. And this is the mini retro palette. Now, I know a lot of people were upset when the actual retro palette came out because this did not have like retro vibes, and this palette came out first. This one I think is good. I don't think it's a bad eyeshadow palette, but I find that like this shimmer here feels like more of a topper to me, and I just feel like this shimmer isn't that great either. I've tried this one and it's good, but it just doesn't blow me away. I feel like the midi palettes that I have work better. They give me more pigmentation, and I've worn this a couple times, but I just don't find myself reaching for it. In my mind, I feel like, okay, there are 5 eyeshadows. Like I can definitely see myself using this. It can be quick and easy for work, but I'm just not reaching for it. And it's not bad. I don't dislike it. I'm going to keep it in my collection. It's just not a palette that I find myself reaching for often. In the number 4th spot is my most expensive Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette, and it is the Metropolis palette. You can no longer get this one. It has since been discontinued. This was one of the $125, $129 eyeshadow palettes, and when I heard that it was being discontinued, I wanted to get my hands on it. I've heard such good things about it. Again, the quality is great. I love Natasha Denona eyeshadow formulas. You have a ton of variety here. I really like her cream to mattes. There are several in here. The shimmers are great. The only reason why this one is not ranking higher is, although it looks like you have a large variety, Again, I just feel like there's not really a light enough shade that I can use to like set my eyeshadow primer or use as my inner corner. And when I use these gold and bronze shades, again, they look very, very similar to me. All of these shades feel a little bit more like of a medium tone, like I can't really get a super light look. You have a beautiful pop of blue here, but again, I think the quality is great. I just don't find myself reaching for it a ton, but it is limited edition and it was discontinued, so definitely keeping it. Now we are in the top 3, and coming in the number 3 spot was a large reason why I got rid of my bronze palette, and it is the Glam palette. So the Glam palette was the palette that I purchased after the bronze, and I found myself really loving this one. I don't find that I'm like such a cool toned lover, and this is more of a cool toned eyeshadow palette, but I was reaching for this one all the time. I was creating different looks. I loved the shimmers, I loved the mattes, and this was a palette that became like a go-to for me. If I had a special event to go to, if I was a guest at a wedding, or even just day to day, I found myself reaching for this palette, and since I enjoyed this palette more than the bronze, that was a large reason why I ended up getting rid of the bronze. In the number 2 spots, it is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection at the moment, and it is the Natasha Denona Retro palette. Again, the midi size. The midi size I find to be the best for me. You do have 15 eyeshadows, you have a mix of mattes and shimmers, you do have some cream to matte shades. This one I didn't expect to love. I wasn't going to get it, and then Smegs let me borrow hers. And I have to say, I don't really reach into these deeper shades, but I really love Nude Mauve as like my crease shade. I love Andy as a crease shade. I really love Jude and Helio on the lid. I love Patty on the lid. Glitz is great in the inner corner. Psychedelic is great in the inner corner. So I feel like I have go-to looks from this palette, that when I'm reaching into this palette, I typically create the same looks over and over and over, but I really love it. And it's easy and it's flawless and the formula is amazing and it's a favorite. If you're familiar with my collection, then you may know what the number 1 palette is, and of course this could change at any time, but right now my number 1 palette is the new My Dream palette. I know there are people who are saying this was like a boring color story. They felt like it was just another neutral, it was more of the same, but for me, this is what I love. This is my color story. I have some easy mattes here. I have some beautiful shimmer shades. You have this fun duochrome here. You can deepen it up. Again, you have the cream to mattes. You have the shimmers. I have an inner corner shade. And I just, overall, I love the formula. I love the looks I create. It's really easy and seamless, and it's such a great formula to work with. And this color story is my favorite. Again, I feel like the midis have a soft spot for me, and I'm just loving this palette. But that is going to do it for this video. I hear my son out there. It sounds like he woke up from his nap. But I just thought, you know, I know that I don't have a huge collection. I don't have a huge eyeshadow collection compared to some other people. And maybe 7 palettes seems like a very small amount. But I still thought, you know, for people who only have a few eyeshadow palettes in their collection, or maybe if it's overwhelming when you have 20 eyeshadow palettes being ranked, I thought that I would share ranking my 7 eyeshadow palettes and why I love them. And I do have to say, Natasha Denona is my favorite formula at the moment. It is definitely 5 eyeshadow palettes, the most that I have in my collection, and I just think it's really worth it. So I would love to know your thoughts down below. Do you have any of these palettes? Would you rank them differently than me? Let me know. Spill the tea. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed before you go. I know that I'm not doing Vlogmas yet, but my Vlogmas is going to start on December 17th, and I will upload every day from December 17th until Christmas Day, and they're going to be collab videos. So definitely make sure you are subscribed and stay tuned, because we got some fun stuff coming up. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.